The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the ocean in strokes of molten gold and burning orange. The sound of waves crashing against the shore was steady and calming, yet the beach itself buzzed with energy. Music drifted from a beach bar a few yards away, laughter echoed across the sand, and the salty air carried the promise of adventure. Emily kicked off her sandals and let the cool water rush over her bare feet. She'd come to the coast to escape the suffocating pace of her city life, a place where deadlines, responsibilities, and expectations pressed down on her chest like heavy stones. Here, among the tides and the strangers who seemed to live freely, she felt lighter. For the first time in months, maybe years, she could breathe. "First time here?" a voice asked, deep and playful. She turned to see a tall, sun-kissed man carrying a surfboard under one arm. His hair was messy from the sea breeze, his chest bronzed by endless hours in the sun. There was something effortless about him, like he belonged to the beach, like the waves themselves had carved him. "Is it that obvious?" Emily asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. He grinned, a little crookedly, but it was the kind of smile that warmed more than the skin. "You've got the look. Wide-eyed. Curious. Like you're waiting for something to happen." She raised an eyebrow. "And what's supposed to happen?" "Anything," he said with a shrug. "That's the magic of summer. You don't plan it. You just let it take you." He extended a hand. "I'm Ryan." Her hand slipped into his, warm and rough from the salt and surf. "Emily." For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to that single handshake, that single exchange. His eyes, blue like the sea, lingered a second too long. She told herself it was nothing, but her racing heartbeat betrayed her. Later that evening, Emily found herself at the same beach bar Ryan had mentioned. String lights hung above, swaying in the breeze. People danced barefoot in the sand, and the air smelled of coconut sunscreen and rum. Ryan spotted her instantly, his eyes lighting up like he'd been waiting. "You made it," he said. "Don't surfers have better things to do than hang around bars?" she teased. He leaned closer, the smell of salt and citrus clinging to him. "Maybe. But tonight I wanted to see if the wide-eyed city girl would show up." Her cheeks warmed, but she laughed. And she did. The music swelled, an upbeat summer song that made the crowd sway, and Ryan held out a hand. "Dance with me." Emily hesitated. She wasn't the type to dance with strangers, let alone on a beach full of people. But the way he looked at her, like nothing else in the world mattered, pulled her in. She slipped her hand into his, and suddenly they were moving to the rhythm, the sand soft under their feet, the ocean's roar blending with the beat. Ryan leaned closer, his lips brushing near her ear. "See? You don't need to think. Just let it happen." Her heart pounded. His breath was warm against her skin, his hand firm on her waist. Every inch of her buzzed with awareness. When the song slowed, they didn't stop. Their bodies swayed together, slower now, closer. Emily looked up at him, caught by the intensity in his gaze. It was reckless, dangerous, thrilling. She should have stepped back. But instead, she tilted her face upward. Their lips met. Kiss was soft at first, testing, but quickly deepened as though both had been holding back for too long. The world around them blurred, the music, the laughter, the waves, all falling away until it was only him, only her, only the fire between them. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Ryan pressed his forehead against hers. "Told you," he whispered. "Summer makes anything possible." The morning sun was already warm when Emily stepped out of her small rental cottage. The salty breeze carried the scent of sunscreen and grilled seafood from vendors setting up along the boardwalk. She'd spent most of her first days here wandering alone, sketching in her journal or sipping iced coffee while watching strangers laugh with each other. But today felt different. Maybe it was the lingering taste of Ryan's kiss from last night. She touched her lips, still flushed at the memory. She had never kissed someone like that, so sudden, so unexpected, and yet so natural it felt as though the universe had planned it. Her phone buzzed. A new message lit up the screen. Ryan, waves are good today. You free? Emily stared at the words, a smile tugging at her lips. She typed back before she could overthink it. Emily, meet me at the beach in 10. When she arrived, Ryan was already there, surfboard stuck upright in the sand. He looked impossibly at ease, as though the world was his playground and the ocean his kingdom. His hair was wet from an early swim, droplets running down his chest in the sun. You came, he said, grinning. I said I would. He stepped closer, brushing her shoulder with his. City girl keeping her promises. I like it. She rolled her eyes but couldn't stop her heart from racing. Ryan offered her his surfboard. Ever tried? Emily laughed nervously. Do I look like I've ever tried? He studied her, eyes twinkling. No. But I think you'd surprise yourself. Before she could argue, he tugged her hand and led her toward the water. The waves curled and shimmered, daring them to enter. Ryan showed her the basics, how to balance, how to read the swell. When she failed miserably and fell flat into the water, she came up sputtering, hair plastered to her face. Ryan laughed, that deep, warm sound that made her stomach twist. He reached over, gently brushing wet strands from her cheek. You look beautiful like this. Emily froze. The words, simple as they were, hit her like a wave. She opened her mouth to reply but found herself speechless. Ryan leaned in, his voice low. Don't think too much. Just feel. And suddenly, the water around them didn't matter. The sunlight didn't matter. All that mattered was the heat in his gaze and the way his thumb traced her cheek as though she were fragile glass. He kissed her again, deeper this time, with salt water still clinging to their lips. Emily melted into it, arms sliding around his shoulders as he held her firmly, the surf crashing around them. Every sensation was amplified, the warmth of his skin, the rush of the tide, the taste of him. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing breathlessly, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. You're dangerous, Emily. She smirked. Me? You're the one dragging girls into the ocean to kiss them. Guilty, he admitted. But I don't regret it. That evening, Emily joined Ryan and some of his friends around a bonfire on the beach. Flames licked the sky, sparks drifting up into the darkening night. Music played from a small speaker, and the group passed around drinks, their laughter blending with the crackle of firewood. Ryan never strayed far from her. He sat close, his thigh pressed against hers, his arm brushing hers whenever he moved. Every touch was casual, accidental, or at least that's how it seemed. But Emily felt each one like a spark. At one point, while the others were distracted with stories and games, Ryan leaned closer. You're thinking too much again. I'm not, she whispered. Yes, you are. I can feel it. His lips curved into a half smile. Come with me. He took her hand and pulled her away from the fire, down the beach where the waves rolled lazily under the moonlight. They stopped by a cluster of rocks, the sounds of the group fading into the distance. Ryan stepped closer, his fingers brushing her arm. Do you feel it too? He asked, his voice husky. Emily swallowed hard. What? This pull, he said, his hands sliding down to intertwine with hers. Like I can't stop wanting to be closer to you. Her breath caught. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she kissed him, urgent and unrestrained. This time, there was no hesitation. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her against him as the kiss deepened, hotter, more desperate. She gasped softly against his lips when his fingers grazed the small of her back. The world spun around them, the tide, the moon, the firelight in the distance, but none of it mattered. Emily had never felt this alive, this free, this wanted. When they finally broke apart, gasping for air, Ryan pressed his lips to her forehead. Summer's just getting started, he whispered. And Emily knew then, whatever this was, it was only the beginning. The days passed like dreams. Every morning Emily woke with sand still clinging to her skin. Every night ended with Ryan by her side, whether it was sitting around a fire, swimming under the stars, or just lying on the beach talking about everything and nothing. She hadn't planned this. She'd told herself this trip was about escape, about solitude. Yet here she was, her heart beating in rhythm with someone she'd only just met. Someone who made her forget that time was moving, that summer had an end. One evening, the beach was nearly empty, the tide low and the sky brushed with lavender twilight. Emily and Ryan walked side by side, their hands brushing until finally, he laced his fingers with hers. "You know," Ryan said softly, "I've lived here all my life. And still, this summer feels different." Emily tilted her head, curious. "Different how?" He looked at her, really looked, with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Because of you." The air thickened. The waves crashed softly in the background, a heartbeat to their silence. Emily wanted to reply, but her words tangled. Instead, she let her actions speak. She rose on her toes and kissed him, slow but certain. Ryan deepened the kiss instantly, his hands sliding to her waist, pulling her against him. Heat radiated between them, the kind that made her forget where she ended and he began. They returned to his small beach house, the kind of place that smelled of salt and sun. The windows were wide open, letting in the sound of the waves and the scent of the sea. The only light came from the moon filtering through the curtains, silvering everything it touched. Emily stood in the center of the room, suddenly nervous. Her heart thundered, her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sundress. Ryan stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek. "We don't have to rush," he murmured. But Emily shook her head, meeting his gaze. "I don't want to stop." Her words lit something in him. He kissed her again, harder this time, his lips urgent and consuming. His hands trailed down her arms, sending shivers through her body. She clung to him, desperate to keep the moment from slipping away. Their kisses turned into laughter when they stumbled against the bed, but the laughter melted into sighs as Ryan's lips traced along her jaw, down her neck. Every touch was electric, every kiss a spark that ignited something deeper. Emily let the straps of her dress fall, her breath catching as Ryan's eyes darkened. He looked at her as though she were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and that gaze alone set her aflame. When he whispered her name, it wasn't just desire, it was reverence. They made love slowly at first, as though learning each other's language, then with the passion of two people who had waited too long. The world outside, the ocean, the night, the future, ceased to exist. There was only skin and warmth and the sound of their hearts racing together. For Emily, it wasn't just physical. Every kiss, every touch carried weight, a promise unspoken. She realized with startling clarity that this wasn't just a summer fling. This was something real, something she hadn't known she'd been searching for. Hours later, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of salt. The moon had shifted higher, casting silver light over Ryan's face as he traced lazy circles on Emily's bare shoulder. She smiled sleepily. "You're going to ruin me for normal life, you know." He smirked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Good. Then you'll have to come back." Emily laughed softly, but her chest ached. Because as much as she wanted to believe this moment would last forever, a voice deep inside reminded her, summer's end. Emily hadn't counted the days when she first arrived. Time had been endless, long afternoons melting into starry nights, moments stitched together with laughter, sand, and the taste of Ryan's kisses. But now she noticed. Calendar in her cottage was almost full. Her bus ticket back to the city sat folded on her nightstand like a secret she didn't want to acknowledge. And yet, every time she looked at Ryan, carefree and golden against the sunlit waves, her chest squeezed with the ache of what she hadn't said. One afternoon, they sprawled together on the sand, Ryan lying on his back, hands folded behind his head. Emily rested her cheek against his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heartbeat. "You're quiet today," Ryan murmured, brushing a hand through her hair. Emily hesitated. "Just thinking. About." She didn't answer. She couldn't, not without shattering the fragile magic they had built. Ryan tilted her chin until her eyes met his. "Don't tell me you're already thinking about leaving." Her breath caught. Ryan. His expression shifted, a flicker of pain beneath his easy smile. I knew it was coming. Summer doesn't last forever, right? The words cut deeper than she expected. She sat up, wrapping her arms around her knees. I don't want this to be just temporary. Ryan pushed himself up beside her, his hand brushing hers. Then don't let it be. She shook her head. It's not that simple. My life is back there. School, family, work. And mine is here, he said softly. I've never lived anywhere else. The ocean it's part of me. The silence stretched between them, heavier than the waves crashing in the distance. Emily blinked rapidly, her throat tight. Ryan reached for her hand, squeezing gently. I don't know what the future looks like, but I do know what's real right now. Us. That night they went back to his house, but the mood was different. Their kisses were fierce, tinged with desperation. Emily clung to him as though trying to memorize every detail. His laugh, his scent, the way he whispered her name. They made love again, but this time there was an edge of sadness in the passion. Tears mingled with kisses, and when Ryan held her afterward, his arms felt like both a sanctuary and a cage she didn't want to escape. I don't want to lose this, she whispered into the dark. You won't, Ryan said, his voice firm though his eyes betrayed him. Somehow we'll make it work. The next few days blurred together. They filled the hours with everything they could, dawn swims, late-night bonfires, endless laughter, and endless touches. But beneath every moment lay the knowledge that the clock was ticking. On the eve of her departure, Emily stood on the balcony of her cottage, staring at the moonlit ocean. Her suitcase sat packed behind her. She felt hollow, as if leaving would strip away a part of her she couldn't get back. A knock at the door startled her. Ryan stood there, hair tousled, eyes shadowed. He didn't speak at first. He just stepped inside, took her hands, and held them tightly. Don't go, he whispered. Her heart twisted. Ryan, don't go back to a life that doesn't make you feel alive. Say, with me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Choice hung in the air, heavy, impossible. The ocean roared outside, as though urging her to decide. She pressed her forehead to his, her tears dampening his skin. I can't just throw everything away. Ryan's voice broke. Then tell me this was just a fling. Tell me it doesn't mean anything. But she couldn't. The words wouldn't come. Because it wasn't just a fling. It was everything. The morning came too quickly. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, her suitcase zipped and waiting. Sighed, the gulls cried, and the sun painted the waves in soft pink light. It should have been beautiful, but all she felt was dread. Ryan hadn't stayed the night. After their fight, if you could even call it that, he'd left quietly, pressing one last kiss to her forehead before walking out the door. She hadn't slept since. Her bus left at 9. When she reached the station, Ryan was there. He leaned against his old Jeep, arms crossed, eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. For a moment, Emily froze, torn between running to him and keeping the fragile pieces of her heart intact. You came, she whispered. He managed a crooked smile. Of course I did. I had to say goodbye. The word goodbye lodged in her throat like glass. He stepped closer, brushing his knuckles along her cheek. I don't know how this ends. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is just a chapter we'll always carry with us. Emily's eyes blurred with tears. Ryan! Before she could finish, the bus driver called for boarding. The sound sliced through her like a knife. Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she thought she might shatter. Don't forget me, he murmured into her hair. As if I could, she choked out. Their lips met one last time, desperate, hungry, aching with everything they couldn't say. And then she pulled away, boarded the bus, and watched through the glass as Ryan grew smaller, until he was just a figure on the horizon. Back in the city, life felt muted. The noise of traffic, the gray buildings, the endless rush, it all pressed down on Emily heavier than before. She went through the motions, unpacked, returned to school, smiled when people asked about her trip. But at night, she lay awake with the taste of salt still on her lips, the echo of Ryan's laughter in her ears. She tried to tell herself it was just summer, just a fling. But the hollow ache in her chest told her otherwise. Weeks passed, then months. And then, one evening, as autumn leaves scattered across the city streets, Emily's phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. "Ryan, look outside." Her heart stuttered. She threw open the curtains, and there he was, standing on the sidewalk below her window, surfboard strapped to the roof of his Jeep, his crooked smile brighter than the city lights. Emily bolted down the stairs, her breath catching as she reached him. "Ryan? What are you?" "I couldn't do it," he said, cutting her off. His voice shook, but his eyes burned with certainty. "I couldn't stay there and pretend I didn't need you. So I came. Wherever you are, that's where I want to be." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she launched into his arms. His mouth found hers in a kiss that erased months of distance, a kiss that was promise and surrender and beginning all at once. When they finally broke apart, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. So, not just a summer fling after all. Emily laughed through her tears, her chest swelling with joy. No, not even close. And as the city roared around them, they stood locked together, the rest of the world fading away. 'Cause some loves weren't meant to end with summer, they were meant to last forever.